Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Victory Over Self Radio. Happy New Year, as this will be our first episode of 2023. And we have a guest on today, Ray Zingler, that we have been following for a long time. And just it's a highly anticipated episode to finally get Ray on here. And to kind of continue the introduction and how we first kind of came to know Ray, we're going to turn things over to Blair, and Blair will start firing off some questions here. But ladies and gentlemen, Ray Zingler, take it away, Blair.
Ray, so the first time that I saw your social media was when I was lurking over the Instagrams for garage gym ideas. And
oh, is that right?
I came upon your social media, your gym, and I thought, man, to have a big garage with open bays and a ton of equipment would just be like the dream. And do my own thing out of there. I thought that would be the best thing ever. And to this day, that was a few years ago, I don't have a garage, so no garage gym, but it's still a hoop dream. But
for sure,
just tell us about your gym, how it started, where it started, and let's start there.
Yeah. So again, I'll kind of back you up back to when I was in middle school. My father was kind of our middle school football coach, and he saw that in like the younger athletics side of things that, again, he wasn't necessarily concerned with seeing guys squat 400 pounds, but he saw like a lack of physical preparation. And this is, back in the early 2000s for those younger demographics. And he said, hey, we can coach football all day long, but, if these kids aren't physically prepared for the game, we're going to spend some time this off season and train them. So Dad didn't know exactly what he was going to do, because you can't just take, 50 kids into a Gold's Gym or anything like that. You have to find a way to have this facility. So one weekend, my mom was out of town on a girls' trip, and Dad says, get in this truck. We go down to this local fitness depot, and Dad literally bought a glorified Gold's Gym and moved it into the basement of our house. I'm talking squat racks, leg press, lat pull down, $30,000 worth of stuff. And we get it delivered, and Mom's getting home from her trip, and we got a 18-wheeler in our driveway unloading all this equipment. My mom's like, what in the hell is, going on here? And anyway, we converted that into a gym down in the basement where Dad started training me. And then at the end of the football season, he put out a little flyer to the members of the team. It's not required, but hey, anybody that wants to learn about strength and conditioning, we've got workouts Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 4:00. And, he's thinking 6 people are going to jump on this. He was charging like $5 a session. Well, the first day we didn't really have this plan because we didn't know what was going to happen. We get a knock at the door at 4:00, and there's 37 kids at our front driveway. And my mom's wondering what in the world's going on. We just invited the entire football team to the house. And anyway, make a long story short, it kind of segued from there where, it went from having a couple of sessions a week where Dad was training us to now he was having multiple sessions a day to try to, accommodate everybody in this 400 square foot room. And, this is, again, back when I was in middle school. And then, I get into college, and I was obviously obsessed with the weight room. And I originally thought I was going to go the college route. But again, something we'll get into later, being the son of college football coaches, I saw how demanding the college side of strength and conditioning was, where you can be the best strength and conditioning coach in the world. But unfortunately, sometimes that's not, you're not always in control of your fate, so to speak, based on administration, based on head coaching changes, et cetera. So I saw my dad, who was a longtime college coach, kind of segue himself into that entrepreneurship role to start his own business. And I kind of said to myself, why not be in charge of my own success or failure? So it kind of morphed into this gym Dad started in the basement when I was in middle school, all by accident. I grew up in the program. I grew up in the system. And again, this was a side gig that my dad had. He owns a commercial flooring business. And when I got, towards the tail end of high school, Dad said, I don't really have time to serve 2 masters. I can't run my flooring business and this, strength and conditioning thing that at this point had now morphed into serving kids in the community. Like it blew up because at the time there wasn't, your micro, you had your Zach Evaneshes and Joe DeFranco's, and that was pretty much it. So he basically told me, hey, you know what I'm doing. I've trained you since you were 12 years old. Would you like to take over? He was slowing the business down, the training business down a little bit. Would you like to take over? And I looked at it at the time as 18 years old kid and said, you know what, it's some side money. I like training, whatever. I'll take the cash. I didn't really know where I was going with my life. And then all of a sudden, 2 clients turns to 4, 4 to 18. Next thing I know, I've got kids doing step ups on a staircase in a residential house. And I said, I guess I'm this Gary Vaynerchuk entrepreneur thing they talk about, so that was really it. So it was I'm very fortunate to have a lot of resources and be, counseled by a lot of quality people, but it was really, this platform was kind of handed to me, from a standpoint of, I had the facility, it was in a basement of a house. It wasn't ideal, but, you look at Joe DeFranco and that 500 square foot, closet gym he started with. I bust him about that because my gym was only 432 square feet to his huge 500, but that's really what it was. And then, for the first 5 years, I didn't breathe. I just kept my head down and trained. And, one day my accountant called me and he's like, do you have any idea how much money you made last year? And I couldn't guess. I'd just get the checks. I'd go to the bank and I'd sprint back to go train people. And he's like, Ray, there's these things called taxes. And I'm like, I don't know what any of that means. Let me just, let me spot the squats, and then sure enough, I'm a business owner now. So it fell in my lap with a lot of just gritty effort and dumb business sense that I've eventually, got counseled on down the road. So,
well, it's obviously worked out pretty well.
Yeah, and, it's done. I've done all right. So
one thing I've noticed with following you for so long and just watching your athletes train is how simple it is.
For
how
sure.
simple you keep everything. And that's probably a testament to like having the 450 square feet and having to keep it simple.
Absolutely.
But can you just touch on that? Can you touch on the training side a little bit?
Yeah. So, and again, I've obviously gotten, I don't want to say smarter as I've gone along. I've just gotten less dumb, but you work with kids for so long and you take a look at their life. Strength and conditioning is my life. I'll talk to you about strength and conditioning for 12 hours on Christmas Day. I mean, I'm pumped out of my mind about it. But when you look at it in the context of a kid, it might be 2 hours of their entire week, where it's 12 hours in my day, 7 days a week, 365 a year. It's 2 hours of their week. And I'm competing with baseball practice, with hitting lessons, with homework, with Snapchat, with Netflix, with 86 different things. The kids live their lives like this all the time. They've got so much competing for bandwidth in their brain to sit here and try to be fancy with these kids. They don't have time to brush their teeth properly or focus on that. So to me, if I'm going to try to give somebody the highest return on their time investment, simplicity is the only choice, in my opinion. So it's one of those things, obviously combining the fact that they're beginners and they're going to respond well to just about anything you throw at them. I'm just a massive believer in compounding interest and doing little things very, very well, very consistently, because again, just as an example, I'm not hating on Olympic lifts or anybody that does that, but there's guys that program Olympic lifts. And is a perfect power clean a better exercise than a weighted box jump, holding on to dumbbells? And apples to apples, it is. But if I can teach a kid right now to jump up onto a box holding 15-pound dumbbells and he can perform it with 90% proficiency tomorrow, or I take that same kid who throws a power clean up and he's reverse curling, okay, now that perfect box jump to that subpar power clean, what's the better exercise? One takes me 6 months to possibly get it right. I can teach you how to jump on a box holding 10 pounds tomorrow, so it's all about maximizing their time. And I want to give you results right now. Again, if I had the time or desire to teach the power cleans and it was something that's, absolutely essential, then I would, but I don't not coach Olympic lifts because I hate them or I think they're bad. I'm just dealing with a finite amount of time with kids who have 86,000 things competing for their bandwidth. I got to simplify the process to be able to get them the results they're after in a time efficient manner.
But coach, I got to clean. Coach, right. I got to know how to clean.
Right. And that's the one side that I dislike, is because, again, there are guys that do it very, very well. And, there's guys that know how to teach it. And there are some college programs that, almost enforce it. But, all of the studying that I've done over the time, and I see the kids, at the end of the day, the two most important KPIs, key performance indicators, in my opinion, are number one, attendance, and number two, on-field performance. So to me, if somebody can show me where a perfect power clean helps, a guy on a football field who's got to overcome a defensive lineman and get to the second level, prove it to me. You know what I mean? And I don't say that to be a smart aleck, but my point is like, where are we justifying that you have to sink a below parallel box squat? I have guys box squat high all the time and they end up in chairs on signing day. Does that mean, that the high box squat is the devil because some, offensive line coach said squat lower? You know what I mean? It's like, where's the proof? I'm trying to pay attention to the most important metrics, not this, old school clean, 4 sets of 10, I'm trying to pay attention to the thing that matters the most. And that's, how are the kids performing on the field? And now if my kids lose out on an opportunity because they didn't power clean and you can prove that to me, I'll go back to the drawing board and start power cleaning tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm with you there. What I tell my kids, and I work at a private high school here, and they want to do all the sexy Instagram, TikTok,
Sure.
whatever stuff. They want to do cleans, blah, blah, blah. And I just say like, hey, right now it's not the most important thing. What's most important is you're in season. Let's keep you healthy.
Absolutely.
And then,
the best ability is availability. That's right.
And then what I tell them too is, hey, I know when you go to college, you're probably going to be working with a coach who wants you to do cleans. So before you go to college in your senior year, season's done, I'll show you how to do cleans perfectly.
That's smart.
I've got my USAW. I know what I'm doing. I'll show you how to do it. But right now we don't need to do it.
For sure. And that's brilliant. And a lot of it too, not to say that all sports don't use the Olympic lifting, but a lot of these kids are in a weight training class at their high school as well. And whether that's great coaching, poor coaching, again, 90% of those guys are throwing cleans in there. So at least they've been exposed to the concepts. It may not be perfect, but again, if I am a supplemental strength and conditioning coach, meaning the majority of these kids are training in school, I'm not sitting here standing on top of the hill saying I'm better than you or anything like that, but at least they're exposed to these different environments where a lot of the cleans are still taking place in the school system. And at the end of the day, a clean is an athletic movement. And I'm not saying that all college athletes are proficient in every single exercise, but the likelihood that they'll be able to at least pick up on that a little bit better as a 19-year-old kid, even if they're just barely being introduced to it, is a lot higher than me, who's working with kids across the spectrum. I've got kids in my gym who want to play professional athletics, and then I've got other kids that are afraid of their own shadows, and they're coming to me to build confidence. You know what I mean? So it's like I've got to keep things, manageable, so that way I can serve the most important component, which in my opinion is getting a little bit better today than you were yesterday. And if I can do that simply, I'm going to sell out on simple until it proves me wrong. And that may sound boneheaded, but it's just working with the demographic I have. I've never seen simple not work with my demographic.
Yeah. With you there. Totally with you there. You guys want to follow up on that?
Yeah, for sure. First, sorry, Ray, I know you're the guest, but Blair, I really do like the idea of like, hey, if you do make it to college, before you leave, I'll show you how to clean.
No, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's really smart.
It's simple, but it makes it a brilliant idea.
Yeah, because if they have the athletic ability to get there, they're probably going to pick up on cleans pretty too.
That's exactly my point. Versus some kid that's just there to lose a little bit of body fat. Is the clean? Do I need to pour into that kid and focus so much on technical depth and all of this?
Yeah.
When all they want to do is show up and sweat and be able to check the box. You know what I mean? That's something to keep it easier. But no, that is a brilliant idea to where, hey, it's not a complex thing, especially when you're talking about an Olympic lift from a sporting perspective. Obviously, Olympic lifting is a sport in and of itself, which is, again, one of the main reasons I don't like coaching or teaching another sport to help improve another sport, because of the technical aspects in that sport in and of itself. But to teach a high school kid that signed his letter of intent how to throw a hang clean is not rocket science for a guy that obviously has the requisite athletic ability to be able to play at the next level,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And so I wanted to dig in real quick, Ray, on, you mentioned for your first KPI, it's attendance. So
right.
Do you mean attendance in your, I'm going to call it out of sport training sessions, or that combined with in-sport practices and games?
So I was speaking on it more of like a strength and conditioning perspective, but I think the whole concept, I mean, I believe that in every area of my life, whether that be my faith, whether that be my relationships, if I spend 5 minutes a day in the Bible for 365 days, I'm never going to have one single day that, moves the needle in my life. But by default, I've gotten closer to Christ in my relationship. Well, if I send one text message every single day to a different parent of one of my athletes or an athlete or a friend, one single, hey, I'm thinking about you message doesn't do a lot, but doing that 365 days in a row, that has made me become a more gratuitous or a person that's adding value to the life. It's the over time. And I think from a training standpoint, the more consistently we train, and it's obviously different, from an athletics perspective versus like my own personal training, where training is my sport, so to speak. But, the guys that I've had that have stayed consistent, whether that be twice a week, 3 times a week over the long haul, are just, by default, in my opinion, they're giving themselves a better opportunity to get to where they want to go. And I think the cool thing about consistency too, and that attendance that I talk about, the more frequently you attend, the less better you have to be at each individual session. And what I mean by that is you have room for error because you're being exposed to the stimulus more times. What I say to people all the time is, all right, if you only come to my gym once a week, I've got to throw, in order to give you the Zingler Strength program, I got to throw a lot at you. Because we got to do upper, lower, jump, sprint, single arm, single leg. There's a lot going on. And again, we're talking about kids who have a lot of things competing for space in their brain, versus if I can span that out over 3 days a week, and I can focus solely on upper body one day and solely on lower body the next day, and then maybe a total body type lift on that third day. Just by default, you've given yourself the opportunity to have to be, less perfect in each of those 3 stimuluses, which is why I'm a big believer in splitting up the upper body and the lower body. And I know from time constraints, and obviously in high school settings, sometimes it's essential to have that, total body type lift. But at the same time, again, if I'm dealing with kids that have a lot of stuff competing for their bandwidth, and now all of a sudden I'm teaching a hinge pattern, and then now we're going to go to a barbell row, and then we're going to go back to triceps, and then now we're coming over here to a Romanian deadlift. There's a lot going on. I don't like to superset. I don't like to combine. I want to focus solely on what's right in front of us. And again, I say that recognizing I have a little bit of leverage because I have the luxury of time versus sometimes in a setting that you guys might be in, you guys have a fixed amount of time where I can just tell Jimmy to come back next Thursday and we can focus on that one area more specifically. So that has helped me to kind of compartmentalize to where the kids can focus. Okay, it's upper body. I'm not going to have to worry about much with my legs and this. And obviously all training is total body. When you look at a jump or a sprint, or, people can't understand when they're bench pressing, how I try to help them to understand their hamstrings and their hips are involved, because driving your feet through the floor, they just view it as arm day. You know what I mean? So it's trying to break it down to their understanding.
No, that was beautiful. Thank you for expanding on that, because I think there's just a ton of good lessons in there for athletes to kind of hear and listen to, and also coaches as well. And then we'll give you time at the end to kind of shout out all your socials. But for those listening, Ray's a phenomenal follower and follow, and he has a post recently on stacking days. And he just takes you through every single day the things that he committed to, that he did with success. He mentioned earlier, reading for 5 minutes a day, and just so true with the attendance, showing up, putting in the work, especially when we're talking about the dosages of training throughout a year. And so, Ray, I want to kind of switch gears a little bit. On a previous podcast, you mentioned that your grandfather was a college coach, and on today you mentioned that your dad was a college coach. So coming from a line of coaches could be like coming from a line of being a pastor's kid, where sometimes you could kind of go off the rails a little bit. So describe for us what it was like growing up with that lineage of coaches, some of the lessons you learned, and then having kids of your own. What are the things that you're aware of or that you're trying to pass on?
Sure. And that's a great question. It's funny just to kind of break down my family tree. Obviously my grandfather and my father were college football coaches. I have uncles that were military, and then the other side of my family is all blue collar workers. So I kind of have this, I guess what has developed me, so to speak, is you have the coaching lineage, you have the military aspect, and then you have the blue collar, swing your hammer, bring your lunch pail type lineage. And that's kind of what I guess developed me and built me into who I am with that kind of mindset. A lot of times too, speaking of the pastor's kids example and not flying off the rails, when you're a young guy and you're exposed to these like highly disciplined, hardworking people that are obviously take pride in what they do, sometimes that can be a little much, when you're a 15-year-old kid and you're like, gosh, I just want to hang out and I just want to relax and this, that, and the other. But it's always go, go, go in my family. It was always everybody was disciplined. And I'm not saying that we were perfect or anything like that, but there was fire behind everything that we did. And there was always effort. It was one of those things, you finish the drill. I can remember being 15-year-old kid and I was lawn mowing a lawn and I didn't blow it off properly. And here my dad and I are at 9 o'clock at night wearing headlamps, making sure the thing was blown off correctly. And I hated my dad for that. What the heck, man, this idiot's paying me $15 to do this. He's cheap, but it was never about the money. It's always about the principle. So a lot of times I almost disliked that as a young guy because I didn't have the maturity to understand it. But then, to look at where I am today, it's like this whole like attendance thing that we're talking about and the consistency. It's like that bled into me. I had no other choice. You know what I mean? It was like every single lesson that my dad, ever shared with me, we always related everything to sports and everything to, so at least he knew how to speak on my level, now my sister, it was funny, she'd be talking about, a boyfriend breaking up with her. And then all of a sudden dad would try to compare that to a quarterback throwing an interception and having a short memory. And my dad's like, what, cover 3 defense. My sister's just tearing up about the boyfriend, but dad was so, well, if you think about it, in cover 3, sometimes the safety has to come over and my sister, so what in the world are you talking about? But that is kind of just, bled into me. And again, initially I didn't understand it, right? When you're young, your parents don't know what they're talking about. They're always wrong. They're old. They don't get it. And then now it's like, man, there's a reason he did that. One kind of story to share about my dad, who is now in the entrepreneurial phase of life where he owns a commercial flooring business. I was on a job with him. We were putting in some floor mats down in Atlanta. And we had these 100-pound buckets of glue, and we had a straight runway where you could drive a vehicle, and our truck was parked at, 100 yards away. And he said, Ray, we got to carry these buckets of glue back to the truck. And I said, Dad, no, we don't. Let's just drive the truck to the glue, and that way we don't have to carry it 100 yards. So no, we're going to carry the glue to the truck. And at the time, I'm thinking, this guy's an idiot, man. Like, what are you talking about? We'll drive the vehicle here. So we pick up those 100-pound buckets of glue. He's 50 years old, farmer carrying it the whole way. And I was like, Dad, that was like the dumbest thing we've ever done. And he said, Ray, the only reason I have a chance in this life is because I've always been willing to carry the buckets. And I'm thinking to myself, that's so dumb. What now I look at it now when I don't want to train tomorrow because I got 92 different things. I'm going to carry those buckets. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things that at the time you never get it, man. It didn't make sense. Oh, he's inefficient. It doesn't make sense, but it's the whole principle behind that, the work ethic and the discipline and doing the things that other people are unwilling to do. It's like, I may not even want to have the post you just talked about with the 365. I don't want, but I don't know any other way. You know what I mean? It's so ingrained in me that now I'm just who I am based on how I was raised.
Mm-hmm. So to dig into that a little bit more, you said the discipline and the work ethic to do things that other people aren't willing to do. You didn't have that 4 years of typical college goofing off, playing video games, drinking beer and stuff like that others did. So what was it? Was it just your own drive, or was it the way that you were raised that got you through all those years when all your friends are off having fun?
Right. And don't get me wrong. I definitely, I visited and had my time and my fun and all that stuff. But I think that there was, the best way to put it, man, is honestly coming out of high school. I was never a smart guy. I was never talented. The reason I had some success in athletics was because of my strength and conditioning and my effort and the way that I put in the time to give myself an opportunity. But, and as embarrassing as it sounds, is, I think for a lot of years, especially from 18 to 24, 25, your ego is through the roof. And I kind of had this idea where I wanted to prove people wrong. I wasn't going to eat dinner with my family on Thanksgiving because I was going to work. I wasn't going on family vacation. I wasn't doing all these little fun things, looking at Christmas lights. I wasn't doing that because you were unwilling to, and I wasn't going to let you beat me, and it sounds selfish to say, and it's awfully silly now that I look back on it, but I think I kind of had this intrinsic drive to prove people wrong because I wanted to obviously be successful. And then around 25, I kind of had this big shift in my head where instead of trying to prove people wrong, I'm going to go try to prove to those who believe in me right. You know what I mean? And I think that that's super critical, that a lot of times I hear these guys that are speaking, my younger athletes, I just want to prove them wrong. I want to get a scholarship because I know they don't think that I can. And now it's trying to kind of shift their mindset to where, hey buddy, there's a lot of people that do believe in you. You want to prove those people right. And I believe that a lot of my intrinsic desire to prove people wrong led to my burnout, because again, from 18 to 25, and I'm not kidding when I say this, it was 7 days a week. I was up at 4:00 in the morning. I'd train people every hour on the hour till 9:00 at night. I would suck down. I'd put chicken in a blender and I'd blend the chicken and drink the chicken shakes while I'm waiting for the client. And it was almost like that became, in the beginning, you hear the hustle and the grind and all this stuff, which again, I'm thankful for because, it built me into who I am. But then it also kind of got to the point where, hey, if you want to go far, go alone. If you want to go, you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. And that's where I started to build a team and develop, people around me. So that way I could be more effective because I bragged like crazy about working 100 hours a week. But now, was I effective in those 100 hours or did I just have it so I could say it? You know what I mean? It was about, I transitioned my mindset from ego driven, I'm going to outwork you, to I'm going to optimize my time to add value to others. I had my eye on the right ball. I was just, the perspective was off.
No, that's good. And that transitions really well into kind of my next question here. So during those early years, it's ego driven. It's I'm going to be better than you driven. And I'm sure a lot of your identity was wrapped up in your work, right? And
absolutely, it's my whole life.
From a faith perspective, the number one in your life, the idol in your life was your career, your job. And it seems like now as you're a little bit older, you're kind of transitioning more into how can I impact these athletes' lives a bit more. And first, you need to have that change within your heart of having your identity not in your work. Right. So can you just talk a little bit maybe about early years, kind of maybe where your identity or your focus was, and then have you kind of transitioned out of that into your faith becoming more of an integral part of your life and your coaching?
Sure. And it's one of those things, and I don't mean to share my entire testimony. So if I obviously go down, a rabbit hole, feel free to stop me at any time. But I grew up in church. I was in church my whole life. And then, in my early 20s, I started having these really weird panic attacks, a lot of anxiety, a lot of, I don't want to say depression, but I was really struggling. And as a strength and conditioning coach, I was a fixer. I want to fix everything. So I'd spend hours and hours a day on the internet reading these forums about how to cure anxiety and fix this. I mean, it got to the point where it was so bad that I'd have to wear sunglasses inside because the bright lights triggered my anxiety. And I'm thinking I got brain tumors. I got all these issues. And again, what I was doing, and I didn't know it, is I was feeding it because I was trying so hard to fix it versus accepting it. That there was one day, for about a year and a half, that it was very, very debilitating anxiety. I had to drop out of college, the whole thing. I was really, I was suffering. I felt like I was in a hell. I really did. And one day about a year into this, I just said, you know what? This is just how I feel now. I got these awful feelings, these panic attacks. I don't like going into rooms. I hate this, but I have no other choice. So I'm just going to accept it. I almost got mad at God. And I said, God, this is miserable, but if this is just what you want me to feel and this is what you want me to be, then so be it. I'll bear my cross with honor and I'll just walk through the fire and just deal with this. It wasn't a week later. I stopped having anxiety. I stopped having panic. I stopped all of this stuff. And I truly believe that it was, again, for a year, every single day, I was fighting so hard to cure this thing. When in reality, it was, in my opinion, you look at working 80 hours a week, I'm doing all these different things. It was God grabbing a hold of my heart and saying, slow down, man. You know, you have to, he's going to speak to you one way or another. And I firmly believe that that was an area of my life that I didn't have the answers to. And again, 8 + 8 is 16. I can figure that out. I couldn't figure this out. So I think it was ultimately my submission that allowed me to kind of overcome that. There's not struggles that I don't still have with anxiety and things happen just like anybody else. But it was one of those things that was the most miserable time of my life as far as feeling. So I don't want to say that I'm immune to difficulty moving forward. But again, that hell that I was going through, it allowed me to feel what really, really bad feelings feel like. So now anything else, I don't want to say is not important, but nothing, a lot of stuff that happens to me negatively pales in comparison to how I felt over that year. And anyway, to kind of answer your question, that shifted my mindset because in the beginning of the training side of things, it was strength and conditioning. It was all I cared about was weights, technique, Westside Barbell, reading the different programs. I didn't care about the individual. I cared about how can the squat make this individual faster. And then, you know, I kind of, after that experience in my own life, you know, some other things started happening to me where, you know, there was one day I get a phone call from a mother and I was still a younger guy in her early 20s. And she said, you know, hey, Ray, I just wanted to let you know that my son, you know, we were in a therapy meeting and he said he doesn't need to go to therapy anymore because he found himself in your gym and he has confidence. And, you know, at the time, whatever, squats, I'll see him Tuesday. I was so dumb and still so naive to understand what she was saying. And I blew that off. And, you know, now looking back, I realize how powerful that was. Not a year later, I get another call. Ray, you know, we had a family therapy session and my son, who's been dealing with some substance abuse and dealing with, you know, personal harm, you know, he felt like he no longer needed to kill himself because he found purpose in Ray's gym. And I'm thinking, okay, now somebody's got my attention. You know, here I am thinking it's about squats and deadlifts. And now this kid has found, you know, value in his own life. And then kind of the icing on the cake, you know, 5 years ago, there was a boy came into the gym and he said, Ray, you know, I want what you have. And I said, I didn't know what you're talking about. What do you mean you want what I have? You know, you have this, you know, positivity around you. Have something going on that I don't see in a lot of people.
Wow.
I always have a Bible in my desk in my office, and he kind of hinted at the Bible and he was kind of hinting, he didn't know how to ask, but he wanted to learn about Jesus. And I said, man, listen, you want to talk about faith. I don't have much time. Again, I'm a crazy, hard charging entrepreneur. It's the middle of winter, garage gym. I said, Wednesday mornings at 6:00, I have from 6 to 6:30. You meet me here every single Wednesday and I'll go over the Bible with you. And here he comes bundled up in sweatshirts, beanie. I don't have heat in the gym, nothing. For 6 months, we meet every Wednesday morning at 6:00 in the morning. 6 months later, he's laying over an elite FTS bench, praying the prayer of salvation, giving his life to the Lord. And after that, I said, man, like this isn't about sprints or vertical jump heights. This is about something more than that. So now where strength and conditioning used to be my life, tell people I'm a strength and conditioning coach, but it's actually a lie. Strength and conditioning is nothing more than the vehicle that I have to be able to reach young people, you know, so that's just the driver. So don't get me wrong. I'm super passionate and on fire. I want to learn about training and serving and all that stuff, but it's really my end goal is if this person can find confidence in my program and I help them to associate positively with strength and conditioning or fitness. And when they get to 30 years old, if they go to the gym twice a week and do lat pull downs and goblet squats, I won. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as much as I'm still focused on the athletic development, it's who are these, you know, who are they when I'm not around? Can I impact the trajectory of their life, whether by example of how I live my life with my training, with the way that I treat people, with my availability to other people. So that's really where I've kind of shifted look, guys, training is really, really easy. You know, what do athletes do? They jump, they sprint, they hinge, they squat, it all works until it doesn't. I make the training super, super simple so I can free up bandwidth to pour into those kids far beyond 3 sets of 10 or 4 sets of 8. You know what I mean? That's what shifted me for sure.
Yeah, beautiful. That's absolutely huge. Beautiful. And
it's pretty neat.
How amazing too that you've been able to see the fruits of your labor.
Oh, it's
right.
It's I was just I was the officiant, and that boy who gave his life to Christ. Wow. I was officiant in his wedding a year ago.
So cool.
He was the high school reject that was too dumb for anything. The dude's making $1,000 a day selling BMWs. I'm teaching him how to tithe and all that, you know. So it's just a neat thing to see that guy who was scared of his own shadow. You know, Mary bought his first home at 21 years old. You know, the kid's doing it. You know, and it's been incredible.
Unbelievable.
Awesome.
In the coaching profession, we pour ourselves out so much, and very rarely do we get to see the fruits of our labor. So to be able to see that, man, that we've all coached athletes that have gone on to success. We've all been a part of, you know, something that there's been a championship or whatever, and those things are they're fleeting, right? Those aren't the memories that we talk about from 5 years ago. It's the concrete things, when somebody could give their life or their identity to the higher purpose or a higher power outside of their results. That is what keeps you going for sure.
And it's tough, man. It's super tough because, again, I'm on one side where it's like, obviously I'm an entrepreneur. I'm into business. Obviously, don't get me wrong. I want to make money. I want to be successful and all that stuff. But, you know, what's troubling to me is kind of a point you just made that I get it. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. The majority of people are hiring me, not because of my faith, but because of the ability to help their child in basketball or tennis. But at the same time, you know, and don't get me wrong, there are some people, Ray, I don't want you to talk to my kid about anything life related. You go through the squats and you go through the trap bar. 5 years ago, I had a kid, his dad pulled him out of our program because he said, Ray, the kid is listening to you more than he's listening to me. And it was an ego thing. He had trouble that his son was getting value. So he pulled him out. I don't know where the kid is now, but dropped out of high school, did the whole thing. And to me, it's just like, who cares what horse's mouth it comes from? If the message gets across, then it's a win. But again, it was an ego thing. And kind of where I was going with this is like, you know, if I think about, you know, what is my why, what is my purpose, you know, and as a Christian, if I'm going to be a Christian and not just be a Christian in name, it is my duty. It's not a good idea. It's not a nice thought. It is my duty to be authentic and to share my faith with others, which is why I'm so outspoken about it on social media. And I get these DMs from guys, oh, stick to weights. You know, you're really going to jeopardize your business. You're going to have a lot of trouble if you continue just to, you know, you get away from the main thing. And I think to myself, you know, what if I lose 20 clients? What if I leave $1 million on the table? You know, what if I help one person make heaven and miss hell? If I can help one person make heaven, I'll lose $2 million. I'll lose $3 million. I don't care about that. So it's, again, I'm not driven by money. I'm driven by influence and impact. Money is fortunately a byproduct of what I try to do, but to sit here and get away and hide from my faith and act like that's not a major part of who I am. I'm not here right now without that, you know? So it's just one of those things that I've got to, I'll compromise on the music in the gym as much as they put the stuff on. I don't care to listen to. I'm not compromising on my faith. And if I end up losing, it's not my money anyway. You know, I'm just a steward of it for 80 years until I get to go home. You know what I'm saying? So that's really why I'm fearless with it, because again, the dude took care of the birds. I got a good feeling he's going to take care of me. So.
Heck yeah, absolutely. And then let's say worst comes to worst, you lose your business. I see on social media, you'll know how to survive there with
for sure.
Hunting, fishing, you're dialed in. And,
During the pandemic, we bought a cabin that you couldn't find with 4 GPSs. So I can go off the grid and we'll find a way to make it. But no, it's that's definitely a hobby of mine, but again, I'm on fire for what we're doing now for sure.
Heck yeah, as Ray Jr. said, country boy can't survive.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, heck yeah. So
absolutely,
I love the talk outside of, the weight room. And I really appreciate your openness there. And yeah, just sharing what,
right.
what's happened in your life and the impact, and kind of getting vulnerable there. So with, again, another phenomenal transition there.
Yeah.
You've said often about your training that it's simple. You've said often about your training that you don't get caught up with the razzle dazzle.
Right.
Story from my life. I did.
Sure.
I started out with the exact same kind of influences: Louis Simmons, Joe DeFranco, Jim Wendler, Zach Evanesh, and then I went all in on, it's all we need to do is sprint. That's it.
You're right.
And Ross, Blair, they're so phenomenal. They're patient with me. They kind of pulled me back. So I want to know from you, what is your BS meter, right? What passes your sniff test? What do you look at something to go, that's really good, let me try to integrate it, or that's that razzle dazzle kind of BS I don't need in here, right? So just kind of explain that a bit for us, please.
So again, and I don't think there's anything wrong with you kind of getting caught in that path, because again, it's where I struggle is people tell me all the time, Ray, if you opened up a 10,000 square foot turf facility and you had speed and agility, you got 2,000 clients. And where I struggle with that, it's like, okay, well, again, I just told you I'm not driven by money. So now I'm basically lying to myself to be able to make short end money on stuff that doesn't really work in a gym. Also, I can do what? Put rims on my truck. You know what I mean? Like where's I can buy a lake house or something. I don't really have any desire to do that. I guess the way that I look at it, and again, I always try to learn from everybody, whether I completely disagree with it or I completely agree with it. I think there's something to be learned or not to be learned from a lot of people. And, as far as the BS meter goes, I think that, you have to pay attention to the modern athlete. And this is what I share with people all the time, that if we were like 1970s Russia or China, where our kids were being programmed from 8 years old all the way up in Olympic lifting, and they had this massive background of physical preparation and they were already strong, do you think I'd be selling more strength on top of what was already overdosed to them? Or would I be focused more on some of the speed and agility that, we know it today? But the problem is we're taking a demographic of kids who have never been more underprepared in any other time in human history. And then now, because the concept of speed and agility is palatable, it's less scary than strength training. Now we're affirming somebody else's perception because it's comfortable. You know what I mean? So again, Don't get me wrong. Athletes need to sprint. They need to jump. But to sit here and build a business model on closed drills when we play open, chaotic sports, meaning, a pre-programmed icky shuffle or run to the cone and shuffle left and sprint forward, that doesn't happen in sport. If you try to do the icky shuffle against a defensive back who's playing press coverage and you're looking at the sky, you know what I mean? So it's one of those things that I don't hate the speed ladder. I don't hate, the bungee cords. What I hate is the application behind it, because again, if we're going to use a ladder and we're using that for neural prep or to get the feet moving, that's totally fine. When you call it a speed ladder, well, speed is about the production of force, and tippy tapping through a ladder is not going to produce force. When we're using the bungee cord for an overspeed training effect, I understand what the goal is, but you're taking an 11-year-old who doesn't have the requisite strength to overcome his own body weight, and now you're increasing that. Where does that make sense? So I think a lot of it, and again, this is again circles back to my whole concept of simplicity. Listen, to sit here and charge kids to hobble around cones for 15 minutes when they're doing that for 25 minutes at practice, they can do that in their backyard with their dad if they want to. I'm not going to sell that, because I know that they're not getting the trap bar deadlifts, and they're not getting the reverse lunges, and they're not getting the goblet squat. So again, if you want to do all those things, that's fine. But what we tend to do in America is we take something we're already doing too much of, and then we add more to it. And then when things go awry, we blame it on bad luck. You know what I mean? So again, as a performance coach, I have to find in the modern youth athlete, where are they lacking? What are they not getting enough of? And I have to feed them that. So if every single kid was properly trained from 10 years old to 16, if they come to me at 16 years old and they are super competent in squats and they're all squatting 4 plates beautifully, Now I'm just putting a squat bar on their back for my ego, right? But they don't need more of that. I need to do more of the change of direction, and I need to do some of that BS. So I think it's all relative from a standpoint of why are you doing what you're doing? I don't think that cone drills are a bad thing, but are you putting them in there because Susie's mom thinks that that's speed and agility? Or are you doing that because you know for sure their physiology is screaming for that when it's not, So I think it's all contextual. If guys were, if the sport was get through a 10-foot ladder, icky shuffle as quickly as possible, and that was what they played, I'd have more ladders than you could shake a stick at. But that's not that's not asked of us in the realm of sporting requirement.
So love it. Yeah. And I couldn't agree. And I do like how you said all the speed and agility stuff is less scary than the strength work.
It's
right?
all about palatability. It's what looks okay. Oh, well, we sell speed and agility to sixth graders, and we do strength training with the high school kids. It's all perception, and it's all verbiage, and it's all word. I'm not in the business of telling people what they want to hear so I can hopefully earn some short-term money. If my goal is a performance coach, I have to give you what you want, or I have to give you what you need, not what you think you want. And that's a hard sell. I understand. I'm competing with Netflix and Snapchat, and I'm selling stuff that's really hard. That's a tough sell in 2023. You know what I mean? But there are some people that are craving it and they want it, and the vast majority aren't. But I'm selling out on those select few that are willing to be educated, that are willing to learn what's necessary. Anybody can go to the park and do karaoke. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now with we're going to say sales and business kind of out there and on the mind. When we were kind of putting thoughts and questions together and discussing bringing you on, I know Ross was really impressed with, hey, dude, you've been a business owner for a long time. So I'm going to turn it over to Ross here with some of his thoughts and questions.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, Ray. So obviously you've been running a gym, like you said, since you were 18, 19, which is pretty impressive.
Crazy.
And you've obviously had some good influences with your dad and your granddad. My dad was a football coach growing up, so I knew from
awesome.
a really young age that I was going to be a coach. It was just a matter of what am I going to coach at the end of the day is kind of what it boiled down to.
Right.
What has been the biggest lessons for you? I saw you had a blog post the other day about it, but what has been the biggest lessons for you as a business owner as you've gotten to this point?
For sure. And that's a great question, and it's funny. And I got to kind of circle back to my dad because, again, my dad, college football coach, been, in the Big Ten. He was at Notre Dame, he was at all these big time places and did well. And now he's a floor mat salesman. And I'm thinking, how in the world does a guy, run out of the tunnel at Notre Dame on game day and then go sell, carpet to an office building in downtown Atlanta? How can you get passionate about that? And something my dad shared with me is he says, Ray, I don't care if it's floor mats, strength and conditioning, or selling T-shirts. I'm not as passionate about the mode as I am the people. So it's being a servant of people. And I think that that's super critical despite what field you're in. My dad, I'm not excited to sell mats at all, but what I'm excited about is I'm going to go meet Jim at that office building, and I'm going to be intentional about making Jim's day better. And now Jim is going to buy Dad's product, not because Dad knows more about the mat than the competitor does, but Dad is willing to go above and beyond every single day to be 10 minutes early, shake his hand, and intentionally make his day better. So that has helped me from a business perspective that, again, I understand the squats, I understand the hinges, I understand the sprints and I get all that. But where I minimize that, not because I don't think it's important, but if I know I have a finite amount of bandwidth or I've only got 8 ounces in my cup, I'm going to save the majority of those ounces to be able to pour into you, to be able to ask about your day, to be able to communicate about things that you have going in your life. Because again, people don't care what you know. They care how you make them feel. I've never had a kid say, hey, Ray, thanks for that awesome work. I mean, maybe they say it, in passing, but they remember that conversation that I had with them 10 minutes after the session when we're sitting out in the freezing cold. They tell me about that 15 years from now. You know what I mean? So it's more or less, again, focusing on more being people centric versus business centric. Not again that the business is unimportant, but it's dealing with the psychology of people and trying to make them feel good. You know, one thing that I tell my guys that work for us at the gym is every single kid is leaving here with a fist bump and a smile on their face. You know, I don't care what it takes. I don't care if it's the worst workout of their life, the best workout of their life. They're leaving here with a fist bump and a smile because, again, how did that guy seek me out and shake my hand or give me a fist bump, or did he just let me go through my sets and reps and walk away? You know, that's something that I don't believe in. This year we've added what's called our +1 board to the gym, where it's just a big whiteboard, and every single day there's no names, there's no sport. The day you came in, you finish a workout, could be the best of your life or the worst. You put a +1 on there. And then now the whiteboard, we're 2 weeks into the year, the thing's got 500 +1s on it or whatever. And it's about the collective group working to pull in the right direction. So it kind of all circles back to that consistency and the discipline, et cetera. So it's less about, you know, while business systems are obviously important, it's less about the system and optimizing, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's about serving the person. And I've learned that as dumb as I am with the business systems and these other areas that I definitely need to grow in as a business owner, what you won't beat me in is serving who's in front of me. I'm always going to go all out. I'm right there, and I'll let kind of the other stuff. I'll let the people, my wife, who is smarter than me, she can run the business side of the billing and the payment and all that. I just want to serve you. You know what I mean? So I think that that's critical, is paying attention, making them the main character of the story and not yourself.
I like that. So it's something else, and it's more just kind of a comment, and you can expand on it if you'd like. I think you've been really good about being consistent with your branding, whether you realize it or not.
I don't know. So thank you. Put a hammer on the thing and roll with it. You know, I don't know. You know, so.
Yeah, you've been really consistent, and I think that's a really key part of having a successful business is knowing who you are, what you want to do, and then what you bring to the table. And I think you've been really consistent that way. And my follow-up to that is then, okay, you are who you are, you're going to coach what you're doing, and people know what you're getting. You've kind of touched on that.
Sure.
From the outside looking in, a good portion of your business seems to be a youth population. And you obviously probably work with adults and all that kind of stuff. Like you've got that sort of bit. How do you, I'm going to say, differentiate between, okay, I'm working with this youth population, this is what we're doing, and then I've got some my adult clients that I'm working with. Sure. How does that differentiate, if it does at all, and kind of what's your approach there?
So when I first started, I was training everybody. You know, I had the athletes at 6 a.m., then I had the soccer mom at 7 a.m., and then at 9 a.m. I had the business professional. So I kind of had less branding because I was more wide than I was deep when I first started. And then now, since it's kind of morphed into, we have two main programs at our gym, which is the student athlete program, or I should just say student program. You don't have to play a sport to train at our gym. And then we have our adult fitness side. So instead of, because again, much to your point, you know, to sit here and hammers only with a 52-year-old mom, like she doesn't really care about, you know, that whole stigma. But I've separated in the sense I've got an awesome leader of our adult fitness program. His name's Jared Long. He helps assist me with the student program as well. And he has a very good background in some of that adult fitness or general fitness population. So instead of, not that I can't turn it on and off, what I've learned is trying to put the best people in the right seats. And Jared is much better than I am as far as being able to implement our adult program and resonating with the adults a little bit better, because my thought is this, you know, instead of me trying to be 6 different people and wear 6 different hats, I personally would rather sell out on what I know and what I do well and be the Zingler Strength brand. And then I'll let Jared Long, who doesn't have this big, ugly beard and look like he's about to go like eat a deer leg, the whole thing. You know, I stick that, I keep to my lane, and then Jared will kind of run that adult side of thing. It's in the same facility. And don't get me wrong, you walk in, you got the gun rack or, you know, gunmetal gray racks with the American flag and the military. So it's kind of the whole thing. But what I found too, and Jared has touched on this as well, sometimes those adults, well, they may not be, you know, necessarily as like hardcore as the kids. There's a nostalgia to coming into this old garage. The heat's not very good, the cold's, and it helps those adults, you know, they got to be a little bit gritty too, because again, there's 80 other gyms they could go to with heat and air conditioning and like a front desk. At our place, you drive up a gravel driveway, there's cinder blocks thrown in the yard, and you raise the bays up. So I think as much as the kids are probably more, in line with my branding or my messaging, the adults kind of feel, which a lot of the adults are parents of our current students. So it's almost like they're getting I don't want to say Zingler Strength 2.0 or anything like that, but we're trying to keep congruency in what we offer. We're not a pink dumbbell chrome gym. Now, don't get me wrong. When the adults come, they're wearing their gloves and doing dumbbell floor press, whereas the kids might be in there benching, screaming, listening to AC/DC. But it's kind of not wanting to distance ourselves too far away from what's made us who we are, but also playing to the strength of, Janet doesn't want to come in and listen to Lil Baby on volume 99. You know what I mean? So yeah. It's trying to meet them where they're at.
That's good, man. I like that. So my last little question here, and then I'll turn it over to the boys here. If you've ever worked with me in an office, if there's a whiteboard, I love a good whiteboard session. I will just absolutely rip through a whiteboard. Sure. And
I could turn this thing around and my whole walls are covered.
Oh yeah.
But yes, I'm with you. I'm with you.
And so, I see, every year you post like your yearly, I guess I'll call it a summary of kind of your goals for the year and kind of what you want to do.
Mission, objective, right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Expand on that a little bit. Like, where did that start? What's, why do you do it? That type of stuff.
Yeah, no, it's something too that obviously, and you guys know, everybody's busy, right? You always have good intentions when things are comfortable. That week between, after Christmas and before New Year's, when you don't know what day of the week it is and you're kind of just hanging out at the house waiting for the new year. That's when I do all of that stuff. And again, I do that intentionally because that's my 1 week to take a breath. You know what I'm saying? But I know that when I map these thoughts out and I write them on the whiteboard, I recognize I feel really good right now. I'm comfortable. I'm not busy, but the reason the whiteboard is so important, and I put that in my gym, I take pictures of it, I have copies of it everywhere, is that February morning when it's 22 degrees outside, the gym flooded the night before, things are chaotic, the kids are going crazy. Can I maintain, those principles during that time? And it's very simple to me, and I try to share it with my guys as well. I have it written down right there. And again, I'm not a smart guy, but if I say who I say I want to be, I have to act on all of these principles. And if I make the active choice not to, despite the friction associated with whatever fire that comes that day, I'm basically telling myself that I wrote that, but it's not important to me. And one thing about me is, don't get me wrong, I'm far from perfect. I'm full of flaw. I'm full of error. But I don't have pride trying to, showboat and be the macho man outside. But the one thing I don't want to do is lie to myself. That burns me up more than anything in the world. I can't tell you how many times I've been doing a workout up at the local high school, running stadiums, and I was supposed to do 12. And did I do 11 or did I do? I'll drive back at midnight and do one more in a snowstorm just to get it done because I won't tolerate that. So it's more of an accountability thing. And I think it started, I read a book several years ago that if you guys haven't read, I think you'd enjoy, by Stephen Pressfield. It's called Turning Pro. And basically the premise of it is going from being an amateur to a professional. And again, to kind of summarize the book, I firmly believe that, there's not a large difference between average people and great people. Great people do all the time what average people do occasionally. And it's just one of those things that to hold myself accountable, I may not be perfect at all of those things, but I'm going to have a constant reminder and I'm going to try like hell. I know if I want to be the best in the world or I want to be a top-notch pro, it's going to require me to do these things. They're not hard things, but I need that constant reminder to continue to drive us. Because as you know, when you're busy, good intentions are awesome, but actions count. You know what I mean? So I've got to act on those intentions if I'm going to be who I say I want to be. So it's really obviously the message that I want to project for the business. And as the leader, who does it start with? I got to live the code. And that helps me to kind of, all right, if I'm struggling with something, I'll read through there and I'll say, hey, one time, one of my things is take the extra 5 minutes, meaning, hey, we're always busy, right? But if that kid needs that extra 5 minutes, what if I shoo him off and I only give him 2? I don't owe him that 5 minutes, But if I want to be who I say, I'm going to give him that 5 minutes. And now I go back to the drawing board and I may call that kid on the phone and say, listen, buddy, I'm sorry that I hustled you out of there. I had to get to my next thing and this and that. So it's an accountability thing, more than, hey, look at me, I drew a cool whiteboard. You know, it's something that means a lot to me personally that I hope can then project outwardly when I share myself with others.
Really cool.
I like that. What has been your? I'm going to follow up again. I said that was my last one.
Yeah. No, great, man. I enjoy this.
What's been your the books that have most impacted you?
The book, probably in the last decade, the book that's impacted me the most is Atomic Habits. I don't know if you guys have ever read Atomic Habits. That's a lot of where I'm going over that +1, the 5 minutes a day. That's where I got a lot out of that because, you know, again, I've been an advocate of personal growth, personal development for 10 years, but that book really helped me to kind of compartmentalize and, you know, 5 minutes a day. It's something with training my son, you know, and this is just a little thing that I put together. You know, if I started training my 1-year-old son 5 minutes a day, just 5 minutes, and I do that every single day until he's 10 years old, kid at 10 years old has over 270 hours of quality training before he's 10, you know, and I know that sounds silly. He's 10 years. What are you talking about? But 5 minutes a day of engagement and being, you know, in the mix of doing some sort of scheduled, structured exercise, 5 minutes one time, it's just him playing with dumbbells with dad. You add that up over 10 years. My 10-year-old, and I'm not saying this, but my 10-year-old now has more training than 90% of the people on earth because I was willing to take 5 minutes a day to let him hit a dumbbell he stacked up with a preacher curl bar. You know what I mean? So it's finding, you know, the ability to microdose those small habits that, again, in the short term are nothing, but they manifest over time into big things. So that one, Atomic Habits, James Clear. Man's Search for Meaning. I don't know if you guys have read that by Viktor Frankl. It's the best book I've ever read in my life, just from a standpoint of dealing with adversity and the power of the human spirit. You know, he was in concentration camps and he found a way, you know, they could take everything from him, but they couldn't take, you know, his generous mindset. You know, he was going to take that to the very end. It's a powerful book. If you guys, if you haven't read that. And then one I'm looking at over here that I think you guys would enjoy. It's called Deep Work. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Deep Work by Cal Newport. Phenomenal book, just about, you know, focus and, again, going and, hey, everybody else can work. Are you deeply working? And deep work can only come from authentic, intrinsic motivation. And then the last one, I got him here. This is called Do Hard Things by Steve Magnus. This is a phenomenal book. It's about toughness. You know, everybody throws around mental toughness. And a lot of times, you know, most people think the tough guys at, you know, Gold's Gym and a racerback tank doing curls with a sleeve tattoo. You know, in reality, toughness looks a lot different. And it kind of dives into the science behind it. And again, it's funny, the books that I just mentioned, that Man's Search for Meaning, all these books, James Clear's principles, they all tie in, you know, and I find that unique that, again, some of these ultra high performers, they're a lot smarter than me, but they're not doing anything cutting edge. They're just willing to do simple things very consistently over long periods of time. And that's truly what I believe is how you get to the top. You know, mastery is impossible. But if you sit there and you take 5 minutes a day, every single day with whatever it is, you get a hell of a lot closer than talking about it being a good idea.
Heck yeah. No, that's good.
Ray, you're a self-proclaimed not a smart guy, but you seem pretty wise beyond your years. And I stand on the shoulders of giants. I tell people all the time, you know, what I'm saying I got from somewhere else. And you know, I would encourage you guys to do the same, you know, but I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, one thing I was going to mention was the reading. And do you have a system for reading, or is it just like, this is what I feel like reading on this day, and I'm going to read for this long?
Right. Well, no, it's a great question. I hated reading. It used to take me forever to read a page, and I'd forget. Now, even to this day, I'm not even afraid to acknowledge it on here. Most of the reading I do, I buy the book, and then I get the Audible version of it on my phone. And then I let them read it to me because, again, I struggle with focus because I'm worried about this and I'm worried with that. So what I do to kind of hack my reading is I'll turn my Audible on 2x speed. So let's say it's a 4-hour book that it takes to read. It would take Ray Zingler 404 hours to sit here and read the page and forget. And when I'm having it read to me, now, and I can 2x that speed, my goal isn't to run the fastest race. It's to maximize my time and stay focused. And that extra layer just helps me. But as far as the system goes, and it's nothing that I've really kind of written out, but it's just kind of how it works. I'm typically reading 2 to 3 books at a time. And typically I'll read one that, and I read it early in the day, that might be some sort of like faith-based or business type reflectionary type book to where kind of sets the tone for the day, so to speak. Like I always read, some sort of like wisdom journal. There's a book and it's actually called Wisdom by Billy Graham. It was like one of his daily devotionals. So I'll start with something like that in the morning to start my day off right. And then I'm always reading a book either about training, about business, about relationships, something that's more like personal growth or business related growth book. And then I'll always finish in the evenings with something lighter that may be a fiction book that kind of lets my brain settle out. So I kind of started off early in the morning is set the tone, faith, positivity, wisdom, something of that nature. The middle of my day, because again, I work with students for a living. They're in school 8 to 4, so I can buy 30 minutes of time at 1:15, to read. I'll read something that's going to help me in my craft, whether that's strength and conditioning related, communication, employee optimization, something like that. And then at night, I'll read, just to whatever I feel like reading, so to speak. So again, it may only be 10 pages of each of those per day, but 365 days a year, I'm stacking books up, And one thing too that I think is important just to share with you guys as well is, again, for a long time when I first started getting into reading, it was about volume. Can I read, cover a bunch of ground? And then it's like, well, did I learn anything from that book? Am I applying that? So now what I do is I have all these different, notebooks of where I'll take notes on what I'm reading. I'd rather read 3 great books and apply the principles and study them than just tell you I read 209 books last year. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to act on them because, again, I think it's important to obviously read, but the quality of what you're reading, if you find a book that you read and it speaks to you and go back over it again, highlight, go reread that because, again, you're going to get more benefit out of applying principles read than just being able to say, hey, I read 391 books last year. So that's been really in the last couple of years why my pace may have slowed. Again, it's no race, but it's slowed down because instead of just reading, I'm trying to absorb and apply on top of that. So
that one Instagram post that you get though, where you stack up 27 books,
right.
It looks really, really awesome though.
Right. No, for sure. And it's all about Instagram. It's not about like succeeding in real life. As long as you look cool on Instagram and it gets a bunch of likes and stuff, that's really the main objective. I'm obviously teasing, but it's neat though to be able to share that because that's something that I commonly get asked about is the reading and the reading list and stuff. And here's the 18-year-old kid in high school that, has a 62 going into the final and wonders if that's a B. I was so into the strength and conditioning and performance that not the performance that, the academic side, which I'm not proud of, but it's neat to see that, 2 of my greatest struggles, which were reading and writing, are now 2 of my greatest passions. I read and write every single day. And I think that, again, that allows me, I got a lot of junk going on in here, but to be able to project that helps me to kind of organize my own life. I read a lot of good stuff that might be over my head, but then if I write that down in terms that I understand, I may not get the full grasp of the book, but did I get 70% of it? What if I didn't read that book at all? I got 0%. You know what I mean? So it's trying to maximize the value from the time that I allocate to. I'm sure I enjoy it, but I'm really reading to extract, not reading to burn time.
Yeah. It's funny you say how like at different parts of the day you're reading different styles of books. I kind of do it a little differently, but very much the same where like I'll read one book at a time and it'll be, a book like Breathe by James Nestor. So I'm learning about breathing, whatever parts of the body. And then the next book I read is Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to have them all say them. My wife's like, why don't you just buy a bookstore, man? Amazon's like, oh, carrying more? But yes, that's a great book.
Then I'll read a textbooky book like Triphasic or something. I'll reread it, and then I'll go to something like Goggins. His book. I
love that guy.
Yeah, and I'll cycle through that, and then I'll go to like a Jack Carr novel, and I'll change it up completely. There. Yeah, right. So I just kind of go in those cycles of like textbook to, something a little bit easier, something a little more motivational.
And I'll tell you, that's important, man, because for a long time, all I read was personal growth and development. I thought fiction was stupid. Why would you read about something that's not even true and this and that? But then you learn over time the value of, letting your mind take breaks. My problem is I'd be reading like, just as an example, this book right here, Tools of Titans, which is a great book. It's about, successful entrepreneurs and all this stuff. But I'm doing it at 10:30 at night and I'm reading about some crazy, awesome business system. And it's like, I wonder why I can't sleep at night. I never shut off. So I'll read stuff like Western cowboy novels at night because, again, that allows my brain to shut down. So it's all about what works for you and the timing. But, regardless of one book or three books at a time, I believe that cycle is important because, again, sometimes it's one of those things. I teach it with our athletes. It's not swinging the bat harder or more times that's going to increase your power. It's increasing the other avenues of your athletic performance that's going to increase your power. So if I sit here and I let my mind take a break by reading a book that's not growth oriented, but that now is letting my brain relax so I can absorb more later, it's almost like a short-term step back to take multiple steps forward. So I think that's critical because for many years I screwed that up. And I've gone back and read books that people are like, oh, that book's amazing. And I'm like, wait a minute, I thought I read that, but I was reading it. I wasn't applying that. I was reading it so I could buy the next one and then read the next one, So I think it's important to not focus on speed and not staying, living and dying by one genre, but allowing your brain to absorb different authors and different thoughts and things like that. I think that plays a big role into the overall developmental side of things because you're not beating a dead horse. For sure.
Heck yeah. No, it's awesome. Well, Ray, we obviously don't want to take up your entire day here, but Blair, Ross, anything else?
I was just going to say, one thing that stands out to me, Ray, is how intentional you are with everything you do. And I think that's a huge, key to your success, and appreciate hearing that from you. And one other thing I wrote down that I wanted to add was that I was glad to hear that your kids are listening to AC/DC in the gym and not Pooh Shiesty or
right, for sure. Well, we got a lot of the garbage too, but there's sometimes on Fridays, especially with my older guys, we'll get in there and I'm throwing them back. They grow their mullets out during baseball season, so I said, hey, we're going hair bands when the mullets start coming out. But no, I appreciate that, man. I think guys, intentionality is super key. There's so many people that they exist in life. They go through the motions. They're on the clock to collect their tokens and go home. We're graced with such a short amount of time here. In my opinion, I have no other choice than to go all out. Some guy was nailed to 2 pieces of wood, so I didn't have to go to hell. And I'm not going to be passionate about giving my all to everybody for the short amount of time I'm here. It doesn't mean that I don't have good days and bad days. But to sit here, in my opinion, to live your life on the sidelines or not full of intent, that's you're misusing a gift. You know what I mean? You better bring it from your shoes. If not, what's the point? So that's kind of where, again, and I go off on tangents and I can get loud and raise hell and the whole deal. And there's times where I have to dial back, but I recognize, and I'm very, very intentional about understanding we got a short amount of time right here. It's not about what can I do in 5 years, 10 years. Sure, I've got plans, but it's can I impact and make a difference right now? And I'm going to act on it, and I think that helps me. I may not be right every time, but if I bring fire and passion to what I do every day, I'm giving myself more spins of those wheels to give myself a chance to be right in whatever that area is. So
it's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, Ray, I'll speak for all of us of like, man, this has been such a fun, authentic conversation. You're the man. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you guys so much. It's one of those where, I get on here sometimes and people, let's keep it real scripted. And I appreciate the conversational aspect. One thing I wanted to let you guys know too is the organization with the questions. That was super, super helpful. I don't study it meticulously because I want to be off the cusp and keep it authentic versus, trying to be programmed. But I think your logo is awesome. I think the mission of what you guys are doing is awesome. And I love the organization to kind of have a little bit of prep work to be able to know, what we're going to discuss. So that way I can kind of frame my mind. So I thought that was really sharp of you guys to take the time to do it the right way. Everybody's got a podcast these days, but very few take the time and the professionalism to do it right. And that stood out. My wife was printing out my sheet for me. And she's like, Ray, this isn't just some stupid meathead nonsense. These guys know how to use Word and Google Sheets. Like, what the hell? They know what they're doing? And I'm like, I guess so. Normally it's some guy that's like, West Side conjugate, 4 sets of 2. Like, all right, chill out, buddy. But no, you guys are awesome. So
well, we appreciate it, and it's really cool. It's really nice to see that the actual man matches the presence out there on social media and the internet. And man, your authenticity, your passion, your purpose, everything just came through today, and we're so grateful for your time. But before we leave, you got so much going on. I didn't want to only say, hey, follow this Twitter account or this Instagram account. So for those listening, please just let people know, whether it's they want to learn more about you or your gym business, or they want to read some of your blogs. Where's the best places to go and do all that?
So I'm active on Instagram at Zingler Strength. Twitter, it's just my name at Ray Zingler. And then I'm also writing a blog on a website called Substack, which that's just Zingler Strength /Substack, where I write on there as well. And then obviously if anybody has any questions or anything like that, again, kind of like what we talked about off air in the beginning, I will never big league anybody. I obviously can't give every minute of my day to everybody, but the one thing that I try my very best to do is when I get a message, whether it's about something big or small, is I'll take the time to do my best to help anybody in any way. So they can always shoot me a DM or even an email at ray@zinglerstrength.com. So
beautiful. No,
thanks,
thank
Ray.
you. And when we kind of sign off here, just stay on
Sure.
a second there for us. But one last question.